Match day 2 is now in the books for the Canadian Premier League, and in this episode I'm going to be giving you my review of the entire match day 2 matches, including the midweek game last week between Valor and Pacific FC. And fun fact before we get started is every single match ended 2-1, which is crazy. And in this video though, I'm going to be giving you my ups and downs of match day 2. And why? Because there's a lot of ups and downs, I find it, in the world of soccer / football, whichever you want to call it. And in this video I'm going to be giving you my ups and downs and reviewing this past weekend's matches in the Canadian Premier League. Up. So my first up to start this video off is a huge big up because it actually shows that there is interest in the Canadian Premier League in Canada, because Peter Saad recently tweeted out over the weekend and a pretty interesting fact that about approximately 47,000 people attended the first 6 matches in the Canadian Premier League's history. So I mean, that's an incredible statistic, and it shows that there is interest in soccer in Canada. So that's my first up on my video. Down. My first down is actually going to be Forge FC and York 9 in total, because I feel like they're having a really rough start to the spring season in the Canadian Premier League. Both of them obviously played each other last weekend, got a 1-1 draw in the inaugural match, and then this past weekend they played both of them actually on the road and lost 2-1 respectively. Forge losing to Halifax 2-1 in that really rough match for them, and of course York going into Calgary against the Cavs there and losing 2-1 in that match. So I think that's a really rough start for two clubs. I think a lot of people had a bit of higher expectations for, especially for Forge FC. A lot of people picked Forge to win either the spring or fall season and be an overall champion of the CPL. And right now they're actually looking like, to me at least, the least impressive club out of the 7, now that we finally got the Seal 7 this past weekend. So I think Forge FC's had a rough weekend. I hope that they kind of bounce back, because I was thinking, probably 5 to 6 wins the spring season, and they've already lost the first 2 matches of 10 matches in total. That I think they probably now logistically might have to actually win the last 6 of the last 8 matches they have remaining. So they got to bounce back, but for me it's a down weekend for Forge FC and for York 9. Up. So the next up here is the first wins in the Canadian Premier League, and I mean a huge round of applause to these clubs that got their first win in match day 2, and that's Valor FC, FC Edmonton, Cavalry FC, and the HFX Wanderers. So I mean, every club in the league now has won except for 2, which I just mentioned in that last clip and down, which was Forge FC and York. They still are looking for their first win, but congratulations to Valor FC. I mean, they picked up the win against Pacific FC 2-1 on Wednesday, midweek match last week. They went on the road, got the win, a pretty impressive way too. They actually looked pretty good even on Saturday, despite the loss to FC Edmonton, who picked up their first win in their first match, again also on the road. So a huge win for FC Edmonton there. And then Cavalry was at home on Saturday, hosting York 9, and it looked actually really fun and impressive. They're looking like a fun team to watch this year, really high energized team. They were able to get 2 goals in that 2-1 win. I'm sure they'll be a pretty high scoring club amongst the rest of them in the league this year. And of course the HFX Wanderers at home in their first match at Wanderers ground ended up making for a really cool environment there in Halifax, and that was a fun match to watch too, as they got a 2-1 win over a pretty decent club on paper, at least, in Forge FC. So congratulations to those 4 clubs with their wins. Down, and my next down here is Valor FC's home match, and a big loss, a big 3 points dropped, not only because it was their home opener and they're the only club so far out of these 6 clubs that have had a home opener to actually lose, but it's also big because it was a big match for qualification for the CONCACAF League for this coming summer's tournament. I mean, they're in the mix with FC Edmonton and Forge FC, and the best club with the best home win record amongst those 3 clubs when they play each other is the one that qualifies. And this is a rough first loss because it's at home and it's the first home match, but also because they dropped 3 points, and it was big for the CONCACAF League qualification tournament there, that little mini tournament we're having in the spring here. So I mean, that's a huge down and a huge loss for Valor FC. Up. So my third up here is that all the top scorers in the Canadian Premier League, or at least the scorers from this past weekend, are all the big names a lot of people expect to actually produce this season. You gotta get names like Michael Petrasso, Stephen Hoyle, Luis Pereira, and of course, Jordan Brown for the Cavs there. They all came in big this weekend in match day 2 and scored in a match. So I mean, that was great to see that. Always like to see these big name signings, or these big player signings, let's say, maybe, that come into the Canadian Premier League, especially in year 1. You kind of want them to set the tone, especially early, And, I'm sure we're going to see Marcus Haber added to that list pretty soon. He came pretty close on the weekend. Unfortunately, the woodwork got the best of him twice back to the back, but whatever. It is what it is, and I'm sure he'll score pretty soon, though. But, I mean, it's great to see, a lot of the coming up stars of the Canadian Premier League scoring, especially so early in the competition. Down. Now, my third down is kind of related to the star impact in the Canadian Premier League, and that is Nonaka Dream Farhan. Izzy, where are you? You know what I mean? He's been on the bench the last 2 matches. He didn't start match day 1 against Halifax. He did get subbed in and played like the last 15 to 20 minutes. And then, of course, he was, on the bench, didn't play at all against Valor on Wednesday, which is kind of odd because they were losing with some time left. I can't remember if they still had a sub or not. I think they did. So they could have subbed him on, but they didn't. So I think it's kind of weird that he hasn't started in the first 2 matches for them. He definitely is a good player. He's maybe because he is a bit older. I think he's 34 years old right now. Maybe the legs aren't there after a long preseason. Who knows? Maybe there's an injury that we don't know of, and that's why he's got a very limited time so far in the first 2 matches. I don't know, but it's kind of sucks not seeing Issy out there playing. At least not yet. I'm sure he's all going to be good and fine pretty soon, and he should be playing. Especially with Pacific FC, I think they kind of they had a good team so far. I think there's been a lot of good young players that kind of maybe took that spot away from him in the starting 11, but I'm sure he can regain that spot back up pretty soon. Up. Now my last up here is that the Canadian Premier League young stars have actually been showing up, which is really cool in the match day 1 and match day 2. You always think the stars will obviously take over the big picture of the league, but it's the young players that are a big part of the Canadian Premier League. And why the Canadian Premier League is even around is to help develop young talents. And you got guys like Estevez, Carrero, Langlois really impressed for Halifax, Garcia for Halifax as well, doing really well. So I mean, you got all these young players. Joel Waterman was fantastic for the Cavs on Saturday. So I mean, you got all these good young players who are like under 25 years old, who are coming up, who's got a huge ceiling, but have actually been producing and are in the starting 11 and are looking like they're one of the stars already of the Canadian Premier League. So it's cool to see these young stars come out, and that's a huge up for the Canadian Premier League. And the community really likes to see this. I'm sure all the soccer supporters out there across Canada, the supporters of all these clubs, we like to see these young kind of homegrown type talents come up, or maybe not all of them are homegrown type talents, but you know what I mean. All these young, up and coming talents, and see them produce and be a regular in the starting 11. So to see them come in the starting 11 and produce well and be a big part of the team's success, that's great. And all those players I mentioned were huge in the last match day for their team's success. Down. So I ended off with my last down here, and it's going to be that possession isn't everything. And this past weekend, match day 2 actually really showed that. Out of the 4 matches this weekend, only one club that owned the match in terms of possession ended up actually getting the win, and that was in Calgary with Cavalry FC, winning over York 9 FC in a 2-1 fashion there. The other 3 matches, that the team that led in possession actually didn't even win that match, and that's going to Pacific FC when they lost to Valor FC 2-1. They had possession in that one. The possession was in their favor. And of course, Forge FC had a little bit more possession time than Halifax, and they lost. And of course, Valor had some more possession time against FC Edmonton, and they lost. So I mean, it's a huge factor. Yes, possession sometimes is a huge factor, but I think this past weekend proved that you can still get the job done and win even if you don't have the numbers. And even if you have possession, doesn't mean your team is always that good. I mean, you've seen Valor did look really good despite owning possession. They didn't get the win because FC Edmonton had a really good defense and were able to spring on the attack and get some good goals at some good timings. Forge FC, though, on the other hand, did have possession time, but even with the possession time, they didn't really look all that comfortable. I think they're still, a far from finished product there, and Halifax took advantage of that in their win. So it just shows you this past weekend that possession isn't everything, and that's my last down for this week. It's now time for my most favorite segment on my YouTube channel each and every week, even though it's only the second time I've ever done it, and that is my gem of the week. And of course, if you don't know, my gem of the week is kind of essentially just my player of the week. I just kind of spruced it up. A.F.C. Curtis it, and it's the gem of the week. And my gem of the week this week goes to Luis Pereira of the HFX Wanderers. I think he played fantastic in his CPL debut over at Wanderers ground this weekend. I didn't even think he was going to start, to be honest with you, in the match. I know Stephen Hart said in the post-match conference that it was kind of a match time decision on if he would play or not, and he ended up playing and ended up making a huge difference. He got the game-winning goal toward the end of the match for the Wanderers to win their first ever match in league history, as well as at Wanderers ground. And then on top of that, he's just everywhere. He did all the little things that I thought right in his first match there, and he really proved why he could be in the running for the Golden Boot and why he could be one of Halifax's best and premier players, to be honest with you. So I mean, I think it was really tough to, I will say this, because Joel Waterman was the runner-up for this Gem of the Week this week. He by the way, Joel Waterman did fantastic for the Cavs FC, but unfortunately just got edged out by Luis Pereira. So Pereira is number 1 this week as my AFC Curtis Gem of the Week. Well guys, that was my episode this week. Let me know down in the comment section below if I missed any ups or downs that you thought happened this past match day in the Canadian Premier League. And let me know how you like this format of the show. Do you enjoy it? Do you want to see a different way I do my reviews of the weekend matches? Let me know down below. And of course, if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. And if you want to see more content just like this about the Canadian Premier League, maybe consider hitting that red subscribe button. And you can also watch my content over at northernstarting11.com. I'm going to have a link for that down in the description below. There's a bunch of great podcasts and everything you need to know really about Canadian soccer and how to follow it and all that. And all the little pieces of news you need is over there. My videos are over there, all at northernstarting11.com. So definitely check out that link down below. It's a great website, bunch of great hardworking people out there with podcasts and vlogs just like this. So check it out, northernstarting11.com. And until next week, guys, thank you so much for watching.